Welcome to today's Minority Alliance organization meeting. Today, our topics that we'll be discussing are education reform, mainly focusing within the minority communities. And then also, we will speak on the Portland demonstrations that are going on currently in Oregon. And now the first question today that I would like to open the conversation up with is, what do you feel are the main issues in schools within minority communities? And today I got Mark again with me. So we're going to go ahead and bounce ideas as we always, off both of us and go ahead and get the conversation started. And I'd like for you just briefly, speak on what are some issues that you feel are the main, things within the minority communities that we need to highlight.
Well, I think, the biggest problem that we're seeing in the minority community when it comes to education is that they are kind of hit with a double-edged sword. On one edge of the sword is they're not set up to succeed. They do not have the funding that's required to kind of offer minority children in neighborhoods that do not have some of the resources and facilities that you'll find when you get out into the suburb areas and you get into more well-off areas. There's just an absence of what is needed. I mean, we've heard the stories for years of teachers being underpaid, of teachers spending their own money on supplies, and just many different things that hinder the educators themselves on how you're going to educate children. And that doesn't even begin to cover the problems that the children have themselves. We have situations where a school lunch is the only time they're guaranteed to get a full meal. And there are issues with that. There are issues with the funding for that. There are issues with the qualifications for it. Getting modern equipment, getting the proper books to actually be able to get a similar curriculum to what you will find in a suburban school. It just isn't there. So they're already not set up to succeed. The second edge of that sword is over policy over the last couple of decades of making funding performance-based. So you're already not set up to succeed, but then your success has something to do with how much money you get. So it was a very intricate plan designed to ensure that minority schools and minority areas go on this downhill spiral. Now, unfortunately, I think there's a greater reason for that. And unfortunately, it's rooted where all other things are rooted in is money. Everything we have successfully turned everything into a for-profit business. Medicine is a for-profit business. Everything that we do is a for-profit business. And unfortunately, so is education. It was easy to do on the adult level when it came to college. You can go to community college, but if you really want a leg up, you really want a shot, you're going to need to go to, recognized colleges, private institutions that are going to be at cost. And those costs have skyrocketed over the last few decades. And now it appears to be trickling down to, primary school, to, elementary, to high school, to where you'll hear people like our current education secretary. I know she comes off like a bumbling idiot sometimes, but the truth of the matter is she's good at what she's there to do. What she is there to do is to turn primary education into a for-profit business by making it so unpalatable, so much of a disadvantage to go to a regular school that you would go to a charter school and that you would go to a private institution that comes at cost. And sure, they will tell you that there's vouchers and things like that will help, pay for these things. But at the end of the day, it's going to be money talks. And if you want a proper education for your child, even your young child, you're going to be wanting to take them into a private institution as opposed to a public institution. And there is just more money. And I think now would be also a good time to remember that her husband owns a charter school. So it always comes back to money when it comes to these problems that we're dealing with. And so for minority schooling, we have to be able to get past that double-edged sword, which both come back to money.
Yes, sir. And I mean, I agree on the funding end, most definitely. And I mean, even further than that, what I see within, as you said, the issue with, for a lot of kids within these minority communities, school is more than just school. You're going there that you get a good meal that day. You know what I'm saying? You get to hang out with your friends and your peers. So they don't really look at school. I think personally, a lot of kids within minority communities don't look at school as what it truly is in the education sense. They look at going to school as it's a task for some, and it's to go in there to have fun for others. So I mean, I believe we have to change the culture of schooling in that aspect, and teach these kids the importance of education more so than anything, which I mean that's been emphasized within our community for years, but I don't think at the right degrees and in the right ways. It's like, oh, stay in school, kid, but it's not breaking it down on why you need to stay in school, and the worth of a great education. So I mean, that's just my take on that end of it. And I think that I'm going to go ahead and dig into our second question, which was, how can we assist in changing the quality of education in lower income communities? And my belief is we could change it in those aspects of basically creating more activities within the school that are education-based activities that can give these kids, different outlets and different outlooks on their education. If it's a activity, yeah, there's band and yeah, there's sports. But the thing about sports is sports teaches you certain things that I believe are essential in life. But as far as when it comes to you go to more of these, as you said, the suburban, area schools, and you have the technological club, you have the, club for robotics, you have all these different clubs and outlets that's going to teach your kid more than just, a standardized education. That's going to give them more of an outlook into, as I said, with even the robotics program, which I've known a lot of friends personally that have been in different robotics programs, and now I see in turn, what it's done for them later on in their life, whether they're in that field or not, is giving them a different level of knowledge and a different level of networking in a field that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So I believe those are, certain things that we really need to emphasize on within minority area schools, is the fact that we need these clubs, and it shouldn't be about, I mean, I understand the funding end of it, but it shouldn't be simply based on we don't have the funding to do it, because these kids need these things, and they need them further than for their teenage years. These are things that will carry on into their adult life, and things they learn within these clubs and organizations within the school. So, I just want to hear your take personally on what you think, we can add additionally within these schools to help the kids, want to, crave an education. Because I used to work for a private school a while back, and I worked in their cafeteria area, but I would interact with a lot of the kids that would come through, and they were always happy to be there, like they were having the best time of their life. They're having fun. They couldn't wait to go to school the next day. And I at first, being a kid, where I'm from, I'm like, why are these kids so interested in going to, what's the difference in the private education and the public education? And I see that in those private schools, it's like those kids they're at home at school, they're comfortable. They have fun things that they do to keep them interested in school. The teachers have a connection with them that you don't necessarily have at these public schools, if they're just hiring just any old body who, just because you got the credentials. Your credentials don't say, a lot about your teaching skills to me. I mean, it does to a certain degree, but teaching is more than just what are your credentials on paper. How do you interact with the kids? How do you position yourself as a teacher within a role of being more than a teacher for some of these students? Because especially within minority communities, you might be one of the only adults that they conversate with and they come in contact with that day, that has a huge impact on, the way they think and, the way that they go about things themselves. So I believe, that's another huge area that we want to work in, and making sure that our teachers that are coming into our schools, in our communities, are verified to the T. You've got the experience, you've got the know-how, and you've got the credentials, So I just wanted you to talk a little bit on that end.
Okay. So number one, I agree with all of those points. We need to be able to have legitimate, educators bent on educating, and that's not to denigrate anybody that's doing that. Choosing this profession is incredibly hard, and being able to execute is increasingly harder as time has gone on. So, being able to have those right people in the right place to be able to execute on that level is key. I'm looking at it from a couple of different angles. One of the things that I looked at when I was doing a little bit of research on just some of the things that are missing from the way public school used to be to where public school is now. And the biggest thing that I've seen was like vocational training. It used to be something called vocational training for general practice. And this is going back, they started defunding this program proper in the late 70s going into the 80s. But, you used to come out of high school in the inner city knowing how, basic plumbing worked, knowing how to weld, knowing how to fix a car. And they were able to take those skills and, at a young age, be able to find potential career paths for themselves. Because a lot of times, one of the problems with capturing the imagination of youth in an inner city is they do view school as a task or as a hangout spot. They don't view it as a place where I'm going to prepare for life, or a place where I want to go because I want to do better for myself and for my family, and I can learn how to do that here. Like those things, having something to go to where you're going to get more. Those things have been missing since those things got defunded, and again they turned it to where you needed to get specialty training for it, or you could get training but you needed to prove that you can do it to a certain level, and you can only do that with a specific accreditation that's going to require you either working low income for a while to build yourself up to that accreditation, or going to a for-profit school to get that accreditation. Now, one of the things that I think that can actually be done to kind of take that back and take control of that is for schools to become a part of the community again. I think that for the teachers, being able to call upon your resources. When they were in school themselves, they met other people, and those people have gone into other fields. Being able to bring in some people, being able to reach into the neighborhood, some of the business owners in your neighborhood, some of the mechanics in your neighborhood, some of the guys who've gone and become IT professionals and things like that. Being able to get their time and be able to get some sort of commitment from some of these people. You don't need an entire school year's worth, but you need a couple of people from here and a couple of people from there to be able to bring in, be able to run some classes with some of these people. They can volunteer that time, and that time can be given a monetary value that maybe could be used for tax purposes, something like that, where you can begin to get some people in there who can actually show the kids that there's a path. These are people that come from these neighborhoods. These are people that come from their schools. These are people who were able to go on and do all these other things, and it's reachable. The goals have to seem reachable. That's one of the biggest problems when it comes to the youth, is that the goals don't seem reachable. Recently, up until last August when I moved to Austin, I was in Houston for 5 years, and one of my employees is actually a teacher. And she talked me into it. I wasn't sure how to even do this, but she, talked me into going to do a career day at a school, at her school. And these were kids who were all ninth graders, eighth and ninth graders. And it was at-risk school. And these are kids that messed up in other schools and ended up getting sent to here. So Some of them were actually legitimately trying. Some of them felt like they were being warehoused, almost like it was training wheels for jail later. But they brought us in for this career day, and we had such a gigantic mix of people. I mean, we had lawyers in there, we had forensic, scientists in there, we had real estate agents, and the first time I went, I didn't feel like I belonged. I mean, I'm a general manager for a restaurant, so I'm like, well, what do I know? But as we went along with it, and as the kids had their prepared questions and things like that, they really got into it, because seeing all of us, and we were all minorities in there, all of us, and being able to see all of these people who were able to go out and get careers in all these various fields, it humanized those goals. It made them reachable. I had so many questions as to how I got to where I got, and what are some of the things I see and some of the things I do in a given day, to things like that. I had kids walking up to me saying, in 5 years I'm gonna come apply at your place, things like that, because it humanized those things, and it excited them. They were happy to be a part of that. They look forward to it. And I think if you can get on a smaller scale some people that can come in and actually be able to show and demonstrate what it is they do, and demonstrate how they got to it, demonstrate the importance of it, and be able to talk to them from that human aspect of, listen, I was where you were. I know exactly how hopeless this feels, but I can tell you, we can do this and this and this, and this is where you can get with that. Because a lot of times, I mean, they're just looking for that influence, and they're going to get that influence one way or the other. If they don't get it positively, they're going to get it negatively. So I think if the schools become a hub of the neighborhood as opposed to just an object in the neighborhood, that's probably going to be the biggest impact of how we can turn that around and actually make education important for them, and make it a part of their daily lives, as opposed to a chore that needs to be completed today, as long as someone's looking.
Yes, sir. And then as my next question, I mean, which we kind of dipped into this already, but I mean, we're going to, I guess, dig into it a little bit more. As a parent of a minority student, what are things that we can do at home to make sure our kids get the best education possible?
Well, I think first things first is the knowledge of the parent. And I don't mean the knowledge of the parent as in the technical knowledge of, what is it that you know? What do you know about your child? What do you know about their curriculum? What do you know about what they're doing in this grade? What do you know about your teachers? The teachers for your child. What do you know about your child's day? What are they doing with their day? Being more invested in their success. If they're not succeeding in school, are we asking questions? Are we talking to them about why? Are we looking at the influences and the negative influences, and how much of the street spills into the school? How involved are we as parents in how this is going? We have, as parents of minorities, as minorities ourselves and parents of minority children in this school, we have to understand that we are steps behind. There are people who have a head start in this race. Is it fair that we have to invest a little more and work a little harder for that? Yeah, it is. But at the same point, that still needs to be done, and we need to recognize that we all have the same goal for our children: do better than we did. Don't make the same mistakes we did. Don't go through what we had to go through, and some of them even worse than that. So, how invested are we in those goals? We have to be single-minded, and some of the trappings of normal everyday life have to not apply to that, because we have to give them a path, to be able to go farther and be able to do more. That was something I definitely wanted for my children, was to do better than I did, and to not struggle nearly as much and things like that. Like, well, how do you do that? How invested are you? That's a gut check that we as parents have to take on a daily basis. and we have to be involved with our children. We have to notice changes. We have to notice when they stop being proud of their accomplishments in school. We have to notice when the grades slip. We have to notice when the curriculum doesn't seem as challenging this time as it did a year ago. You know, what's going on there, so we can help and supplement them. And again, take it out of being a chore and make it a part of their lives. So I think that's something that's super important for a parent to be invested in.
Yes, sir. And I mean, I definitely agree with you on all the points that you made. And I feel, I mean, even personally as a parent myself, I mean, I feel like these are the topics, the points that you made, you got to stick to them and you got to stay on top of them, you know, and you can't stay on top of it till elementary is over. Can't stay on top of it till middle school is over. You got to stay on top of it, you know, until you feel that they have reached the adequate level of education in life to get them to where they need to be, because it's not over after a certain, you know, point. Because you got a lot of parents who, you know, after elementary school is just like, you stop asking your kid about, you know, well, how was your day? You know, well, you know, those factors don't go out the window, you know, after a certain point, after a certain grade level, it has been passed. You know, you got to make sure you stay within your kids' education. And as you said, totally invested in their success, you know, later on in life. And even, you know, currently, but more so later on in life than, you know, we have been in most homes and minority communities so far. And I mean, with that being said, you know, I want to, because of our time here, I want to go ahead and also dig into what else we were meant to talk about with the Portland protests. But I mean, I want to go ahead and reiterate about the back to school drive that we have. And I mean, that was a huge point with talking about education right now. And, you know, with doing the back to school drive within a minority, a hugely impoverished, affected minority community in Atlanta, you know, we definitely want to be out there and helping people, because anybody who lives here knows West Atlanta is one of the most, you know, impoverished areas of our whole city. And these kids, they don't nearly have the same opportunities as kids in other areas. And so they end up going continuously through the same cycle that their parents, their uncles, their aunts have lived. And it's a continuous cycle in that area. So, you know, I definitely wanted to do the back to school drive in that area so that we can be out there and we can introduce people to what we have going on with our organization. And we can also, you know, be able to give a positive message to the kids in that area. Like, you can do it. You know, there's more to what you're going to school for. You know, yeah, we're giving them a binder, a piece of paper, or a pen, but we're trying to give them more than that in what we can give them in words of hope and what they can accomplish in life. So I would like for, you know, all of our members who do check out the recordings, you know, if you can donate, you know, supplies, or, you know, donate volunteer time to come out and help assist us with this back to school drive, you know, that will help us out a ton, you know, with what we've got going on and trying to build this organization in the right way and support, you know, people in minority communities. And on that note, you know, I want to go ahead and dig into, you know, the monster of the day, the Portland demonstrations that have been going on that, you know, I don't personally, I've seen a good few nights of what's been going on, and I don't agree with necessarily every move that protesters have been making and turning things into a huge debacle of, you know, let's riot now. And, you know, I don't think personally it's the people that are out there with the mindset of really wanting true change and going about it. I don't think it's the peaceful protesters. I think you've seen a huge infiltration of other, you know, parties at work within a movement that was originally, this movement even rekindled, you know, through the incident with George Floyd recently. And from what it originally started off and what it's became now, to me, it's like, it's not what from the get-go, from the start of this, what I envisioned in the direction that it would go. I would think at this point we would have gotten to a point where we could have, if you want to do a peaceful protest for 56, 57 days straight, then that's totally fine. That's totally fine. And that's sending the right message. And that's sending you were trying to get the right message across the right way, by not burning buildings down, not, going out and looting, not causing disturbance in communities, where other people have to live. So my thing on the whole, riots that's going on right now, it's just it's got to be changed the way people are going about this. People can't go out there and just because of the frustration with the country, you want to blow up a police car and stuff of that nature. We've got to show them, as they did in the 60s with the first civil rights movement. People in the 60s were getting water hosed, and still kept it peaceful. They were getting, tear gas, getting dogs sicked on them, and still kept it peaceful. But yet we've reached a point in society to where we feel like we want to rebel against society, which that's not a good idea, period. We all need each other. We're all leaning on each other to make this work. So every piece of society is viable, period. And with the whole defund the police thing, and I mean, I've been holding back on, saying this personally, but, I don't believe in the word of, defund the police. It's just like, let's not worry about defunding the police so much and worry about where these funds should go. Since you have the idea of let's defund the police, well, where do you think the money should go? Like, let's come up with ideas on ways we can do better, in our with the fact of our policing, because we need policing, whether we agree with, it being the current established policing, ways or not. We need policing. So we can either come up with ideas on how we can reform this policing and we can reform our justice system to work best for all of Americans. Or we can, basically you're sitting there screaming, defund something, but you have no ideas on what you should do next. I mean, that's not a good plan. So, I just wanted to, bump heads with you on that end and, see what was your take on everything that was going on in Portland recently, because to me, it's just become, as I said, a huge spectacle of basically entertainment news to see what's the next thing that's going to happen in the Portland riots. And, what are we getting accomplished by keep rioting? If nothing has been accomplished from the way we're doing it now, what can we do different?
Right. So, yeah, I'm going to get to that in just a second. I want to touch on something else you said. I have, just for my own place of business, I have a really simple rule. You can bring me whatever problem you have, no matter how big, no matter how small, no matter, if you think it's petty, whatever the case may be, you can bring me any problem in the world, but you got to bring me two things. You got to bring me the problem, and you need to bring me some solutions so that I can work with you on coming up with a solution that works, and then it can be implemented and everybody's happy. I think that sort of methodology applies across the board. One of the biggest problems that we see, I think, with our protests and in the way that we protest is in its leadership and how we think about that leadership. We talked last week about C.T. Vivian. Reverend C.T. Vivian attended a class that was taught by a man who was taught by Gandhi on how nonviolent action works. Who do you think in leading some of the protests today have gone through anything like that? I'm going to put the over-under at 0. So being able to really preach a nonviolent kind of, this is what we're looking for And yes, you can be frustrated. Yes, you cannot want to take it anymore. Yes, you can be so pent up with anger that you want to scream and you want to tear things up. But you have to understand how easily movements like this can be co-opted, how easily messages can be perverted. And the messages are already perverted. I understand exactly what you meant when you said defund the police. You wanted to allocate some of those funds in a different manner. Do cops need tanks? No. Do cops need military grade equipment? No. Do cops need to be doing no-knock warrants for drug charges? No. We need to allocate that money into their training. We need to allocate that money into a screening process so that we're not hiring, closeted racists who have mental issues into the police force, handing them a badge and a gun and a free reign. So I understand what you were trying to say, in part what you're trying to say, but you blew it on messaging. You blew it by saying, well, defund the police, abolish this, or whatever the case may be. That's why, and by trying to cut down anyone that says, hey, I get it, I know what you're saying, but I'm not with defund. Maybe we do it like this, and not wanting to hear that, because the anger of the moment runs headlong into our seemingly obsessed cancel culture of you're either with me or you gotta go. And we lost the ability to talk to one another. We need to be able to do that. There could be marches, there could be demonstrations, and then the mayor, the chief of police, and the leader of protest need to sit down at a big wooden table in a room somewhere and talk about exactly what the problems are and come up with an actual solutions that work, real solutions that can actually work for both sides, so that a leader of a protest can go back and be able to tell the people, yes, this is what we're getting done. This is what we're working on. This is what we wanted to see. I got that point across. This is what the police chief had to say about it. And be able to actually do something about that, be able to work on a solution. There are some people who got to go. Like, yeah, we want to see justice on these things. Hey, we still need to see the people that killed Breonna Taylor arrested. But how many times has the attorney general, the district attorney, the mayor, police chief, someone, the attorney for the family sat down at a table to talk about these things? What is going to happen here? What needs to happen here? What do we need to see happen here? So I think that is a major missing component from this. It makes it so easy for the anarchists to be able to co-opt the protests. It makes it easy for white supremacists like the guy that they found in Minnesota, or white supremacists who want to get in and incite something and make it worse, and can be able to just jump in and throw BLM on the side of their shirt and start tearing things up. It makes it real easy for an already systemic racist system to get even more systemic and even more racist. It was actually brought up in the hearings yesterday. I don't know if you saw that, but the attorney general was actually asked on direct, where were you when guys with automatic weapons stormed the Capitol building in Michigan, standing an inch away from cops' faces, screaming at them, while dudes with weapons were up in a sniper position on the second floor, talking about cutting off the head of the governor? While at the same time, we're over here tear gassing veterans and moms, and we're point blank shooting protesters in the head with rubber bullets, claiming them to be non-lethal, and those people sit in comas. Where were you on that? We need to be able to hold that kind of power to task when they're doing things wrong, and it's really hard to do that when you give them reason to continue doing more. The average person has a very, very short attention span and one chance at making the impression on what's going on. And I get it. The nature of protest is to make someone uncomfortable, but at the same time, we need a movement in order to get things done. And just being angry and just, let's tear the system down, that won't work. We already know that. We already know we don't want to go, we're not just going to sit here and go head up with police. We need change. We know we're not going to live in a world without police. That's stupid. So what is the goal here? What is the actual solution? How do we get this done? There are people who need to go. There are people who are in the job, right, that have a job of authority right now who do not need it. Those people need to be identified and removed. We need better training. We need police who are actually involved in their communities. We need more social work. We need more stylized versions of intervention to where you don't need law enforcement showing up when someone's having a mental breakdown. That person needs help. That person needs medication. That person doesn't need some dude who went through the academy and he's been given a little bit of word on what to do here or there, but he's got a gun and a taser, and we send him to talk to that person. That doesn't even make sense. You know, another one of those big things. If it sounds stupid when you say it out loud, that's because it's stupid, and it's something that needs to change. So I think that, you know, unfortunately, the message of what was trying to be done here is being completely perverted. It's not too late, but there are so many elements now that are hijacking the message and turning it into turning it to the advantage. We need to keep the pressure on those in power and let them know, hey, you know, it would be so much more beautiful if we were able to see a report on the news. Hey, everybody in the protest today, you know what they did? They marched to a building and they all registered to vote. You want to scare some politicians? Do that. Like that's the sort of things that need to happen. So that's kind of what my take on this whole thing is. You know, yeah, it's out of control. Yeah, there's authoritarian things going on. Yeah, there's these are issues that need to be dealt with. Absolutely. Now, we've identified it. How do we want to do it? I just threw out my things, you know, some things that I think just as a layperson, you know, but I'm not hearing ideas, and we need to hear more of those.
Yes, sir. And I believe that's where all the change and what we're trying to get done, it lies at. We've got to come with ideas to the table. We can't continue to hope that the current elected officials that are in place are going to always have our best interests in mind, per se, and come up with these things for us. We got to take, I would say, our democracy back into our own hands and actually enact our democracy, because I don't believe that people know the power that us, the people, have in our government, and we've given our power away to these elected officials and hoping that, oh, you're going to come up with a bill that's going to work for me to fix these inequalities that we do have. You know, people who are actually in these neighborhoods who experience the inequality daily should have input in the change that is being occurred. So we've got to come to the table with our own ideas and quit just, you know, raving about what's wrong. Well, we know what's wrong. We've already known what's wrong for the, you know, for as long as we've all probably been alive. But but what are the actions that are we going to take to solve these problems? And that's more so along the lines of where I'm worried at this point is, you know, I don't want a politician to end up putting a law into place that, you know, is supposed to help the situation, but it in turns ends up making it worse for a certain group of people, or it in turns, you know, not working for everyone who's involved, you know. So for that to be done, we've got to come to the table, as you said, with our own ideas. And, you know, if that takes as a citizen of the United States, I think what we don't know anymore, or I haven't heard lately, you know, especially within my generation, people don't know the power of writing our own bills to be able to take to our elected officials and say, here, this is a whole group of people in this community agree on that we need this bill passed in this community, and this is what we're going to do. The only people who actually write their bills and take their bills to Congress 9 times out of 10 are not minorities. And I mean, that's just the God honest truth. And these are the people, and that's why the laws are being passed in their favor. And that's why laws are being passed that, you know, benefit certain things that they want to get done, because they're the ones writing these bills originally. And the congressman may take it add his own little spin on it and make it his bill for the glory. But I'm telling you where these bills originate. It's not normally 9 times out of 10 within the minority community groups. So we've got to get together and, formulate our own ideas and our own plans on paper and as a bill structure that we can take to our elected official and say, hey, this is something that we believe needs to be passed in our community to be able to help, out in these areas. So, I mean, that's more along the lines. I mean, even with this organization, that's the rhetoric that we want to push. We're not just doing these videos every week, for show or, just in hopes that, hey, we're just doing it for fun type deal. No, we're doing it to keep people informed on what's going on and to, help people formulate their own ideas if possible on saying, hey, well, you know what? They made a good point there. That is something that could be done. And, you actually participating in the change that we're trying to get done and occur in the United States currently. So, on that note, if you have any more, closing statements today, Mark, I love to hear them. And then, I'll send us off on that note.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of piggyback what you said. I mean, I kind of made my own commitment, to this organization and to be on, to be in meetings and calls just like this, not because, it just seemed like a cool thing to do. No, it's because I am just as tired and I'm just as angry as anyone else is about all these things, about the injustice of it all and the hopelessness that it looks and hopelessness that was projected, meant to make us give up and sit in our place and allow the theft of, what should have been a bounty of opportunity for all of us, and watch that get, just twisted and taken away and continue to be taken away while they tell us to our face that everything's equal. What's your problem? But I think one of the biggest differences and one of the biggest things I like about this group is from the postings that are done online to meetings like this, we're able to talk about real things and we're able to actually throw some solutions out and put some solutions on the floor. Again, I think we need to recognize that the best way to take our democracy back is in our numbers. We're not going to be able to compete with the finances. We're not going to be able to compete with a defense contractor that can drop millions of dollars into a candidate's bank account, or the NRA who can drop millions of dollars into a bank account. We can't compete with that. But what we do have? We have the numbers. We have hundreds of thousands. We have millions of people out there who are tired of this system. And it's not just minorities. I mean, obviously we represent, minorities to the best of our ability, but we also have people out there in all communities who are as tired of this and want better and need more. And being able to bring solutions to the table is big. We need to be able to put candidates in office and they get their opportunity. But when you sell out to that interest and you start, standing on an 80-20 issue and you're taking the 20 because the 20 is where you get 90% of your donations from, you need to know you only get to do that one time and then we vote you out. You need to know that, again, like I said, we could do a protest and it could be 50,000 people in a protest. And where did they walk? They walked to a registration place and they all registered to vote. Like, oh, what are we doing out here? Oh, we're getting ourselves set up. We're going to see you in November. That's what scares people. That's what scares those politicians. You want to get some things done right, you do something like that and you let them know you are about to lose and you're about to lose the right way. We're about to take this back one way or the other. And there's no sound bites. There's no video. There's nothing burning. There's people walking in a quiet line, getting what they need done because it's time to actually change something. Okay, you don't change policy. Our time for changing policy by a march or a single speech, that stuff. I mean, it was novel when it happened, but it was also a once in a lifetime shot. They understood after losing what they lost back then not to do that again. And they started doing other things to be able to make this happen. Southern Strategy is a perfect example of that. So they own the money, right? So we're not going to be able to get it through the media. We're not going to be able to get it through commercials. We're not going to be able to get it through all those things. But each one of us has a phone. Each one of us has an ID, and each one of us can go register to vote. And all of these different things are what's going to really take our democracy back, because you still got to count votes at the end of the day. And if we can't get one, we can definitely get the other. And we can start to put in candidates that actually put in the change that we're looking for. People who can actually talk to us, and people who can come down and actually speak to us, people who have lived among us, who can actually get representation with a novel ideas. And that's what we need to be looking for. And that's what I think our protesters need to be looking for. And I think everyone who, is in our group and as a minority, that is what we need to be looking for. Equal treatment, equal justice under the law, opportunities, no more people trying to undercut our education, trying to undercut our housing, trying to undercut all these things, because if you try it, you're gone. And we're going to put somebody else there. You serve a corporate interest, boom, you're gone. We have many opportunities to make these things work out for us, and we need to continue to take advantage of them. And that's pretty much everything I got to say on that.
Yes, sir. Most definitely. And, I'm just going to leave us with this today. As you said, you brought up voting. And, I just found out myself some news about the Georgia registration. People really need to pay attention. A lot of these states, they do some really, they do really shaky things when it comes to, when you're able to register and the deadline dates to be able to register for certain voting times and stuff of that sort. So you really got to pay attention, and people stay on top of, registering to vote, because they don't want you to be able to vote. And if you really look into the registration dates, they specifically set these dates, so that people can't vote. Because it's already like, if you wanted to vote, I believe in, not the primaries, there was another election coming up here in October, but if you wanted to vote in it, you had to, by the time they sent out the letter that let you know that the date had changed, it was already too late. So that's actually something I saw with my own eyes about a Georgia. I'm not sure what election it is. It's I think a special election in October, I believe, for one of the seats, for John Lewis's seat, I believe so.
Okay.
Or who's gonna take over for his vote. And but to be registered for the special election, you had to already be registered, by like early July. But by the time they sent the notification out, it was already time. So you would have had no idea. But so what's that now?
Oh, I was just going to say, there are people sitting in these positions. They know the power of everything I said when it comes to voting. So there are plans underway. There are always plans underway. Voting suppression is one of the main jobs of our current political system. We need to recognize that.
Yes, sir. So to our members who do watch the recordings, get out there, make sure you register to vote, and make sure, you look into the candidate that you are planning on voting for, and look into their history and things that they have done and laws that they have passed. And, make sure it's something that you can stand behind. Don't just go off of a name or just go off of a party. It doesn't matter what party they're in. It doesn't matter what their name is. It matters what they have actually done with their life as far as a politician. And the things, even further than a politician, even if you look at what good deeds have they done in the community, if they're a business person who is a first-time politician, what things have they done in their areas of business to help out their community or to get certain, things passed or policies that they push. So, people really you gotta step up, and you gotta start making your voice be heard and be known. And then on top of that, as I, mentioned earlier, let's make sure we get on top of this back to school drive. And, this being our first year, make sure it's something awesome and we start off on the right foot on that end. So with that, I'm going to end I'm going to end our call for the week. And it was another awesome week, another awesome conversation. I hope, our viewers, later on who do listen to the recording, you take something away from this and you come back, and maybe come to one of the meetings one of these weeks and, give us some of your ideas so that we can help build on what we've got going on. So thank you again, Mark, and, look forward.
All right. Take care.
Yes, sir.